Have you ever experienced body shame? I can recall detailed conversations with boyfriends in the past, many years ago, alluding to me being overweight. I can then recall a few years later having similar experiences, but the comments were even more critical about my physical body. When confronting them about their criticisms, they would say things like, "Oh, you're just being overly sensitive," or they would say, "I was just trying to make a joke." But in reality, that was not true, and it wasn't funny at all. You can call that person a narcissist, antisocial, a sociopath, or something even darker than that. If you've had this experience, I wouldn't necessarily think these people actually believe the negative things they actually say to be true. In fact, their comments would often fluctuate between being highly complimentary of my physique to being critical of it. So what were they really thinking? Of course, personally, I have always ignored the compliments, but I was always laser focused on the negativity. When I look at all the photos of myself 20, 15, and 10 years ago, I think to myself, dang, I wish I looked like that now. I'm 5'1", and at the time I weighed between 112 and 120 pounds, which is considered a normal weight. However, this is when the shadow work really comes in for all of us. If you're not familiar with shadow work, it's about exploring parts of ourselves that we don't like or that we don't really want to see. It's a powerful tool for spiritual growth. Yes, the criticism can be considered verbal abuse, and yes, these people do have a responsibility for being accountable for their behavior. But we, on the other hand, have to take accountability as well. The reason the narrative kept going over and over again in my life is because I believed this about myself, not necessarily the other person making these statements. In fact, we draw in people into our lives that will mirror our own beliefs about ourselves. There are some people with certain personality characteristics that are keenly aware of our subtle frowns that we make when we're looking at our photos, or the preoccupation with dieting and the self-critical comments. They pick up on all of these patterns and they use it as a weapon against us when we least expect or when we're feeling the most vulnerable. So for them, their behavior may be a sense of control. For us, this is likely to be our weak spot. That is, that aspect of ourselves where we feel most insecure. When the same theme keeps coming up in different ways over and over again in our lives, essentially that same person with a different face talking, it may be a sign that that wound needs to be healed. The storyline bleeds into our romantic relationships, but also friendships, family, even co-workers. If this is the case, you may really choose to reflect on what you feel about yourself. If you project a feeling of confidence and you feel comfortable in your own skin, it would not even be a topic of consideration. The most attractive person is always the person with the most self-love, self-confidence, and self-respect, regardless of size. I often observe people in social settings, and sometimes there's an overweight woman who exudes incredible confidence and is absolutely magnetizing. I've watched others flirt and express attraction to these women. Also, I see the slender, conventionally attractive wallflower getting overlooked by these people due to her sheepishness and self-consciousness around others. So the point is, recognizing our own self-image is essential in order to make positive changes in our lives. Do some soul searching, journaling, reading self-help books, talking with a therapist, maybe do all of the above. We really do teach people how to treat us, and I despise this statement because it is so difficult to face, but it's so true. In doing my own shadow work, I recognize my triggers now. If this resonates with you, please leave a comment, or if you would like to share some of your own story, absolutely do. I would love to hear from all of you. I would also like to remind everyone that part of this community that I ask to please everyone treat others with dignity and respect when they're having courage to express their own feelings and opinions. I thank you for allowing me to be vulnerable, and I hope that my story will help other people tremendously. Thank you for watching. Take care.